Hello, hello, and welcome. We are very excited to have you all coming in today for our kind of like a lunch and learn session. So this event specifically, our career coach, it's a part of this ongoing series where it's really meant to help you take charge of your career and have an interactive workshop around different topics concerning talent acquisition and career development. So again, we're super excited to have everyone come in to the Zoom room here today. My name is Alexia Brewster. I am the program manager for the professional team. So I basically coordinate a lot of the speaking series that people are interested in. And you are all here today for our career coach session, Top 10 Strategies. And it is a part of our affiliate membership program. For those that aren't aware, we have 3 different membership tiers. Affiliate is our complimentary one. So again, we're very excited to be able to offer this content on strategies for your career specifically. So what I want to do now is take a moment to actually introduce our guest speaker. So our speaker is Diane Fenig. So she brings more than 25 years of career development and management experience in a university environment to executive search and leadership development. So we are so pleased to have her here. She does a lot of our career coaches and is really a wonderful speaker and has a lot of depth of knowledge. So feel free, if you do have any questions, definitely put them in the chat or the Q&A, and we can get to them afterwards as well. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then Diane, you can take it away.
And I'll share mine. Very good. We'll do it. All right, here we are. Let's get our top strategies up. All right, let me get to from the beginning. Let's do it. All right, there we go. All right, everyone can see everything. There we go. So one of my favorite topics, and as I was saying to Alexia, this is the right time to do it because in my calendar in my head, we are at the beginning of a school year is the beginning of a new year. So what I'm going to do is share my top 10 and a spoiler at the end. You're going to have ways to connect if you want some of the worksheets I've kind of designed to go along with this. I'm graced to do a Leadership Institute every summer, and I designed this course around the Leadership Institute, and they gave me some feedback over the years of what they wanted more of. So I'm also going to share that later on so that you have it. And if you're watching this in the on-demand library, you'll have all of that as well as you can ask me for the information. So every year in our life, there are years that ask questions and years that answer questions. Think a little bit about your own life this year in 2024, looking forward to 2025. Was this an ask year or an answer year? And I think related to careers, this is always something really important to think about. So my top 10, first one starting with, you've got to define what you want. And what I've heard from folks since 2020 is this sense of definition of where you want to go has changed pretty dramatically. So I remind people time and time again, this is a place where we have to do a reset sometimes to say, I thought I wanted this, but now I want that. And in that reset, think about what needs to change about your current job, what needs to change about your added responsibilities. How do you need to change your relationships with your peers? And how do you have to think about networking in a different way? This is not a one and done. This is something that you need to think about, I think, at least annually. So again, the worksheets I'm going to share with you help you do this in a kind of a cadence formula. For many, to move to the next, education is a part of this. Sometimes it's gaining that MBA. Sometimes it's gaining certifications. Talk to your current management team. Look around and see what other people are doing and credentials that they hold, and ask questions. Is this going to set me apart in moving, across this organization? Because often education is the answer. But it doesn't necessarily have to be an MBA. It could be a specialized master's, could be a certification program. One of my very, very favorites. Mentors, champions, and sponsors. So a little bit of a definition first. Mentors help you early on in your career with the little things that are really important. The little things like how are you successful doing your job? Here's what you need to know to sign into this your technology. Mentors help you with that boots on the ground early. Usually it's early career information. Um, Maybe it's time to get ready for your staff evaluation. And a mentor might say, "Have you started thinking about this? Because this is a good time to get thinking about that." A mentor will help you with those things that you might not know in that first year, in the cadence of that first year of your schedule. There are champions that help us across our career, but I often find that champions, and my analogy is you're running a race, you're running a marathon, and the champions meet you at the side of the road. It's great. They're clapping, they're supporting you, but they're not putting a lot out except for being at that event to cheer you on. They're not doing a lot beyond that, but they are clapping for you, and that's important. But I always remind people champions are great, but don't put all your weight in them because they don't often really extend the most offer and help to you. Sponsors, as the third category, they're super important. And the thing with a sponsor is it is someone who's usually at the level of your manager or leader, maybe a peer of your manager or leader, someone within your organization that is in the room making decisions when you're not there. They're looking at high pro lists within your group and saying, "Where is Alexia's name?" They're speaking up on your behalf when you're not there. Now, it's people go, "Can I go up to people and say, 'Would you be my sponsor?'" Not quite how it works, but what you want to do is have them notice you. Not that you say, "I need you to sponsor me," but you want them to notice your work. And how do you get to know some of the people who could truly represent and help you stand up your work to the leadership team? Sometimes people's managers become their sponsors. Sometimes they don't. Some managers really want you only to be in that box where they hired you. They hired you for a specific role. That's the role they want you in. You would cause them great hardship if you left. So they don't really want to see you leave. That's a problem because they're not going to help you move forward. So that's when you need to reach out to other people saying, "I feel like I'm stuck because every time I try to do something different, my current manager doesn't seem to see me in any other role but the one I'm currently in." So mentors, champions, and sponsors, all of them extremely important at different times and different places in your career. But we've always got to have someone speaking up on our behalf in meetings we are not in, and those are your sponsors. How do you raise your hand? And most people go, "Well, go like this. That's how you raise your hand." But I want you to raise your hand for the career assignments that might not look so good on the front end. I want you to raise your hand when your manager comes in and says, "Would you consider going to one of our remote locations for the next 6 months to solve this problem? And here's why I'd like you to consider doing it." Now, your first thought is, that does none of it sounds good. Sounds like I'd be walking into a mess. You probably will be. But in walking into that mess, you'll be solving a problem. You'll be seen by your entire organization in a very different way. And you raising your hand gives you a totally different experience. That is how careers are built. How do you raise your hand and say, "What about me for this?" And again, so often the opportunities don't exactly look so good. But I promise you, raising your hand and having conversations with your manager or whoever approaches you about this opportunity can really pay dividends over your career. So when you raise your hand, don't immediately give them an answer of yes or no, but go home and think about it and say, "All right, what could this mean?" And ask for what you want when you raise your hand. Ask for appropriate compensation, usually a 10% raise to do that extra work. Ask for appropriate travel. If you're going to be a far distance away, how do you have a remote location, a remote hotel at that location during the week? And you figure out if weekends you're going to spend your time coming back and forth, how you're going to do that. Think about what kinds of things you'd want in return for raising your hand. This is, to me, one of the places where you can really break open your career. Define and craft your network. You're all here. You're saying, I want to start thinking about my career. Who do you want to be talking to? Who do you think can help you kind of open that proverbial door to another opportunity? Where are your second level connections at an organization you're interested in getting involved in? And how can you have a conversation with them about their culture and what they're doing and where they're hiring? And if that would be a fit for where you think you'd like to go next. The power of LinkedIn is huge here. I'm a big advocate of it, especially when you start figuring out, wait, I can figure out who works. And I'm from Atlanta at the Home Depot. Who's in my network at the Home Depot, and how can I get introductions to those folks? This is a true story that happened a couple of years ago. In fact, I saw my neighbor the other day and she goes, I'll never forget what you did for my colleague. So my neighbor's colleague was interested in a connection at the Home Depot, by the way. And I happened to be connected to that person. They were one of my former MBA students. And so my neighbor said, is there any way you can make an introduction of my colleague to your former student from the Home Depot? I said, absolutely. My former students still think I could take away their MBA, so they always do what I ask still to this day. I do crack up. I can't do any of the above. But so I make the introduction. And my former student said, all right, Diane, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to meet them ahead of their interview and walk them into their interview with the person I know. And I'm like, I can't ask for any more than that. That is fabulous. Thank you. But it was a matter of just how do you take your network and figure out how to ask the right things. Yes, this person was hired and it was all a great ending to it. But then the funny side story is the person who was hired connected back with me and he goes, I can't believe you did me a favor. I said, what are you talking about? He goes, I sat across from you when I looked at the MBA program where you worked against my MBA at Georgia Tech that I ended up taking instead of coming to the Robinson College of Business. And I said, your name was familiar, but a lot of people's names are familiar to me. And he goes, I can't believe you did that, even though I didn't come and I wasn't one of your students. I said, that's not what it's about. You made the right choice for yourself. So think about your network. This fall is a fabulous time to work on your network. How do you use that kind of downtime around the holidays to connect with people? Because this is how we do. Let's connect and work on building that relationship. And build the relationships before you need them. You have to make friends before you need them. So this is important that you define and craft who is a part of your network. Please, 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 from my former story, make the introductions because this will always come back and serve you so well. And eventually in your career, you become the mentor to others. And don't take that lightly. You will learn more from those mentor relationships than you ever thought possible. So understand when people ask you for introductions, it's critical. Do it. Take a minute to do it. Those are the people that will help you make introductions later as well. And when you have a chance to be a mentor and offer feedback, do it and see well, first of all, ask that person if they want that feedback. And often they are hungry for it. Become that mentor and continue to learn. Never forget your teammates. And these are the people that are your peers that you work next to. So often in our world, people manage up well, manage below well, but they really forget this manage across. And that manage across is really important because your teammates are your peers and the ones you're going to continually run into and bump into throughout your career. So, how can you support them? What do they need? And as they're rolling out a huge initiative, how can you walk in and say, how can I support this? Tell me more about it so I know where I can add my support and our team support. What do you need? You'll be known if you support your teammates. You'll also be known if you have no intention of helping anybody but yourself. And so often people don't pay attention to the peer. And it's a really important piece to really being successful in your career is understanding who your peers are, because that's one of the places where career opportunities happen, or someone says, because they're in a kind of a different area than you, wait a second, where is Alexia? Where is Amy? Where is Anna? They start asking those questions because they're peers that are not seeing you kind of in their on their stage. Be authentic, genuine, and consistent, please. Everyone, uh, says, I'm going to be different if I'm an internal person who's hired. No, you aren't. You're the same person. But yes, you will look at the job differently as an internal person taking on a new role. Keep the best parts of yourself, but remember that you have to learn this new group. And you've got to learn and unlearn what you might have known about that group and some of the preconceived notions you had of that team as you move into a different role. As long as you're open and curious and you can continue to be the person that everyone expects you to be, that will serve your career so well. I can't say it enough. And I just think it's so important that people remember that we hire people for the people that they are. Oh, I'm getting a lot of beat up about this using this word fit and match. Everyone says it doesn't belong in here anymore, but I can't think of any other better word. So I'm sticking with fit and match. I'm going to work on that. That's on my list. I've got people saying, in all this DEI world, we should be talking about this. In your career, there'll be times where it doesn't fit the same as it did. And there'll be times when you're frustrated because the job you've loved all of a sudden looks different. Maybe your responsibilities get shuffled. Maybe there's a restructure. And in the restructure, you don't sit at the same place you did before. In that, to me, that's a place where fit and match are not consistent with where they started. And when we come to a crossroads with fit and match is the time when you've got to sit back and go, huh, can this work? Do I fit where I am now? And does it feel good? And many say, this isn't the job I started, and that's the job I loved. But where I am right now is not feeling like the right place to be. This is often the impetus for people to start looking for other options. Or I should say, talking to your manager saying, I'm struggling with this latest restructure. Help me know how I can serve you best in this restructure. Because they might give you that really direct feedback that you need to know that you're being written out of this picture and other people are being written in. And then you've got to say, I think it might be time for me to exit because this is not going to create the career I wanted it to do. And I remind people in fit and match, sometimes we've lost our jobs. And, everyone says it's a badge of honor to be a part of a RIF, reduction in force. I'm not thinking it's a badge of honor, but it's one that I've survived myself. It was hard. It was really hard. I didn't see a problem with fit and match, but I was told, "Oh, your whole division is gone. We're going to scrap it all and go back to basics." Wow. So when this happens, you've got to figure out how the word pivot comes out all the time. I don't know that I think of it as a pivot, You have to really usually do a huge shift. What are you going to do when someone says, this is no longer your work? And how do you kind of keep up with, these checks? Is this still my work? And finally, the workout, back to managing up, managing across, managing below. I always think of a workout doing, kind of we have to make sure we do arms and legs and we got to do squats and everything with it. Workout being, let's keep healthy and keep our exercise and all of that. Let's figure out how to manage up and manage across and manage below. Most people are good at two, but not three. How do you really focus on how do I really keep this three-legged stool of up, across, and below on balance? And the workout piece is how do I stay as healthy as I can? I don't know that we can ever be balanced. I don't, in our work and life and work and everything else, we do the best we can. But if we don't take care of ourselves, no one else will. So how do you make sure you pour into yourself what you need? How do you need that time away? How do you need that step back and reflect? How do you need that time really focused on what's going on at home and back away from work for a minute to really focus your energy where it needs to be focused? Because it's really, really important. If we don't do this well, we won't be bringing our whole selves to work. We'll only be bringing 60%. So, how do you work out and how do you make sure that you're keeping yourself as healthy as you can? Is my number 10. So, Adam Grant, if you're not following him, I think he's pretty fabulous. Think about this before taking a job offer. It's worth asking, do I want to become more like the people here? You can aspire to change the culture of a group, but don't overlook the culture, how the culture will change you. Few of us are immune to the values of the people around us. So you've got to think about walking into an organization as you're looking at other organizations. And it's exciting when someone recruits you and taps you to look at a role. But when you walk in and say, my team doesn't feel like a team, and I don't know that that culture is my culture. Pay attention to those things because you, as one person, can hardly change that. The challenge I have when I do these sessions in a longer term is how do you kind of write yourself a note? And one of the things I use is myfutureme.org. And so what I do, but I do this kind of in a flip way. I do this in my retirement as well. Every year, in fact, every fall, I review how I'm spending my retirement. And what I do is I usually go away and spend some time thinking about what am I doing? What am I not doing? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to do less of? And am I meeting some of the goals I made for myself last year? You can do the exact same thing with your career. And I write myself a note in myfutureme.org. You can do all of this for free and bypass all the places where it says, would you like to contribute $5 to do this? You can go in and have that jog your memory every 6 months or every year. So as to keep yourself on track. I also like online journaling. If you're really struggling with career issues, to me, a great resource is writing it out. So those are two things to really help you kind of sit back and really think about your career. Um, I just really love this as a final. The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. It's your decision. You've got to figure out what's next. No one can do this for you. People can suggest where they see you're next, but it's got to be yours. You've got to own it. So that's what's next. What I'm going to do is leave this up here as my contact information and make 2 offers if you are at all interested. So with this other group that I've been working on this top 10 list for the last 12 plus years, um, I've done kind of a Word doc that handles all of these 10 and suggested readings around them and things that people have shared that they've learned about their career. Be happy to share that. Then the other thing is I've been really challenged to kind of create a career assessment And so I'm in the process of trademarking it and be happy to share that. Both of these are Word docs. They are not as set done as PDFs. They're really done this way just because I want to make it easy for you to do this work. And the documents are out there. And what I'm going to suggest you do, and Alexia is going to put this also in the chat. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and say, please share those documents. I can drop it in your LinkedIn after we connect, or you can send me an email to my ajg.com email, and I can drop those to you that way. Either way, I want to put resources in people's hands to do this important work, because to me, it's some of our most important work. So with that, Alexia, we're getting close to time here. I know
Yes.
this one always has a little bit more content than
Yeah.
usual. So questions, what do you got?
So there is one question. So given time, we'll probably just only address this one. So if you do have more questions for Diane, we do have her LinkedIn and her email listed there. Again, please remind her though, given that so many people contact you, Diane, that you attended this specific workshop, just to kind of give you context as far as like what the topic will be. But the question I want to uplift to the group is from someone who, and I think that this question a lot of people have thoughts about, given thinking about career, next steps. What are some essential skills that people should be having if they are an individual contributor and they're wanting to make a transition to a leadership role instead? So do you have any of like ideas, thoughts, advice as far as like what are essential skills that they're going to need to make this transition?
Such a beautiful question. So when you're an individual contributor, it's a me, myself, and I. Well, you could argue with a me, myself, and I, but it's not usually very productive. So when you want to get to a leadership role and dealing with groups, it is how can you tell stories of how you have led a group? And I always think of stories, especially when you lead a group of volunteers, because let me tell you, the hardest groups to lead are volunteers who aren't even paid to do what you say. So how have you led your homeowners association? How have you led your sorority? How have you led a group of moms within your neighborhood? How have you led something at your church? So think of the places where you've taken on leadership roles, and the essential skills, and thank you for not calling them soft because there's nothing soft about them, are how do you connect with people? How do you solve conflict? How do you work through conflict? And for the most part, it comes down to good, solid communication, trust building. Those are the things that are so important. How do you make people feel welcome in a community? And it's not hard to do, but it's calling people the right name. It is saying, "You've been really quiet. Help me know, is there something I can do?" Or, just noticing, or, "I haven't seen you at home lately." It's your neighbor. Is everything going well? What can I help you do? How That's just powerful. That just shows that you're a human being. And so those are the kinds of stories you want to be able to tell at work. And if you're trying to push something forward as a new idea, but you can't do it alone, how can you tell stories of how you've integrated others in solutions in your past? Because our past behaviors are a great predictor of our future behaviors. Everyone's like, I wish that would change. I'm like, it doesn't really. Because what we did before is what we're going to kind of lean back on because we've seen success there. And so we'll probably try that again. But the important part is how do you stay curious and maybe unlearn some things, because we've had to learn how to do that as well. Post the pandemic, when people say, I thought I knew my team, they came back after the pandemic and I don't know them at all. I said, a lot of things changed. We started to think about family and work and balance in a totally different way. So, what was important to your team ahead of that is probably not the same stuff that's important now. And so, with that, how do you tell the stories for that kind of represent who you are and how you could lead? But so many people will say, push back and say, well, you've never led before, so you can't. You got to bring these stories from other places where you've led. I hope that helps you think about it, because we got to have people who want to lead. We must have people who want to lead.
Yeah, I think that is honestly like sound advice. Thank you so much, Diane, for that. Like, again, rely on your community. Like, remember, if you want, especially if you want to lead, you need to be really with the community that you're wanting to lead with or have experience leading. So thank you for providing that. And thank you also, Diane, for being here today, for presenting on this topic. It's obviously very popular and people have a lot of questions about it, around it, and how to do successful strategic planning for it specifically.
And again, people can connect with me on LinkedIn. Please always connect with a message. I always say, I always should say this before we get started, because people are like, oh, I just already said just connect, because LinkedIn makes it look like that's what we should do. Connect with a message and ask personal questions, because so many times the questions here are very personal to your own career, and that's not for the good of the order. So the good of the order is, how do we take a big one like this of how do we sell, how do we lead when we haven't really been a leader before, officially been a leader?
Exactly. So with that, because we are at time pretty much, I am going to share some instructions on how to go about actually accessing this recording. So let me make sure everything's good to go. So for the group, if you're interested in going back to this, because I know there's a lot of tips, so you might be like, oh, what was tip number 3 again, or anything like that. This is actually how you go about watching our on-demand library. So you're going to go to the fortefoundation.org. Under our programs and events tab, there is a tab for professional development, and that's where all of our speaking series live. So Dan has actually a couple of career coaches there. So you'd want to, in the next couple of days, kind of keep your eyes out for this one being uploaded there. So that's where you're going to be able to access it as a Forte member for our community. Other housekeeping things, I do want to mention some upcoming things in case you're curious on other professional development opportunities. Our next speaking series is going to be our Business Essential, which is part of our professional membership. So just a heads up with that. But we actually are collaborating with Drexel LeBeau School of Business. And so they're doing a session on building a culture of inclusion, trust, and empowerment. So it's going to be super cool. Very excited for it, that we'll have that. Other things to mention, we do have a conference available for early career professionals. So if you are a recent undergraduate, so college graduate interested in this, it's $75. You can get more information on our website. So I'm going to drop that in the chat in case you're interested in signing up. And again, it's just like a half a day of really good content to help you advance your career as a first-time professional. And then the last thing we want to just kind of mention here at Forte Mission Moment is what we like to call them. We do a lot as a nonprofit to provide resources and support to women in business. So if you're interested in receiving resources, definitely make sure that you're staying connected with us, some of the programs I just mentioned, or if you're interested in being a resource to other talented women, definitely feel free to stay connected with Forte as well. So we want to kind of continue to grow as a community of just giving and receiving, because it takes both to be able to support each other and develop this network. So again, that's pretty much all I have for housekeeping issues. Again, Diane, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for everyone in attendance today. And I hope you enjoyed the content that we covered. And if you need anything, definitely feel free to reach out to the team. So enjoy the rest of your day. If it's lunchtime, enjoy your lunch. Otherwise, enjoy, again, that rest of the day that you have. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you.